So just astrologically speaking, the next year coming now brings in a new era of in relation to the North and the South Node. So the North and the South Node, they stand as 2 points opposite each other in the astrology charts. And the North Node stands for the direction of evolution, the progressionary direction, and that's going to be entering into Pisces, which is really all about emotional release, spiritual healing, the psychic realm. So this is going to be kind of a primary point of focus for us, which is really nice. So for those individuals who have really been on the path, a North Node in Pisces will help like illuminate that path.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Wetsel, and I'm so excited to have Adam Free here today to join us in this conversation. And Adam is an astrologer, but he specializes in Western astrology. And I'm so grateful to have you here today. The topic that we're going to talk about is a little bit more about this new age that we're moving into, the age of Aquarius. Well, I shouldn't say moving into. We're already in. We have moved into the age of Aquarius, and also talking about how astrology and the planets and the stars and the alignments are affecting us in this shift in consciousness as we move into this fifth dimension. So, Adam, again, thank you for being here. I'm excited to chat with you.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me on your channel. It's a wonderful honor and opportunity. So for everyone out there, if you have not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, it's Adam Stargazing Astrology. And then I'm currently offering a variety of discounted astrological readings for the new year. So whether you're at a crossroads in your life, if you have any relationship questions, if you're looking to move, if you're looking to travel, I cover basically any topic in relation to the mundane life in my astrology readings. And so my email is adamastro, that's ADAMASTRO777 at gmail.com for all reading inquiries. And I believe that will be in the description box of the video as well.
Yeah, and it will be. We'll be sure and include your information. So, Adam, tell us a little bit about your history. How did you get into astrology, and more or less, how did you even get into Western astrology? And because I also want you to talk about, because people may not be aware that it's not just astrology, that there's different forms of astrology. So can you kind of talk about your history first, and then why Western, and then give us a little bit of an explanation of the different types?
Of course. So back when I was just finishing up high school, which was a while ago, I was kind of lost in my life. I didn't really have a direction, and my mother, she was actually seeing this wonderful astrologer at the time because she was going through a divorce and a lot of challenging things in her life. So she recommended I go see an astrologer to get my birth chart done and to get kind of an overview and some guidance as to a direction to take in life. And I had this reading, and it's like everything kind of clicked into place and made a lot of sense. There were all these gaps that felt like they had not been filled, and it really filled those gaps in for me. So it just really highlighted my understanding of kind of a lot of questions I had about my life. And so I found that to be extremely helpful. And so then I started studying it. And there's just a lot of things that resonated with me as far as my relation to Western astrology. And then shortly after, probably about within 2 years' time, I actually started giving more simple readings. And then I kind of went from there. So it was this sort of learning, this uncovering, and then giving the simple readings, and then kind of going from there. So I am primarily self-taught. And this was kind of back in the day around the late 1990s, early 2000s when, we had books. And so I would go to the library And I would get these books, I would get, probably rent out 3 or 4 books at a time, and I would just absorb the information. I would write down notes, things like this. And then, and then I basically had built kind of an inner foundation from there. And Lisa, what I want to tell you what is so interesting is that, um, during this time period, this was my late teens to like my mid 20s. I was living in Hawaii for a while, and I had an Akashic record reading done. And during this reading, the reader told me that in past lives I had been an astrologer.
Mm.
So there was this, yes, yes. All she got was my first, middle, and last name, and she told me kind of this whole history. And one of the things was you had been an astrologer. And so I have this strong belief now that a lot of this information I was absorbing was sort of like a remembrance of what I had been in the past.
Yeah. And which obviously makes sense why you were attracted
Yeah,
to astrology. And again,
yeah,
and why it probably came really naturally to you because you've done
yeah,
it before. You're reliving what you already know. So good
yeah,
for you. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got this computer program, this very simple computer program years ago when I had this clamshell Mac. I don't know if you remember the clamshells. Um,
No.
back in like the okay, it was like a clamshell Mac book. And so I had this simple computer program, and then I would do the charts on there. And then what I would do is I would go to these festivals. During the summer, I would drive to festivals, and I would go and I would just find people and I would give astrology readings.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and so I had a wonderful time doing that, and I did that for probably about 5 to 10 years. And then several years ago, I started my YouTube channel.
Hmm. Okay, and so here you are doing it for everyone, for
Here
the
I
whole
am.
world,
Yes.
for the whole world.
Yes.
So, can you talk a little bit about why Western astrology? Why did you choose to go that route?
Yeah, that is a great question. So there's Western astrology, there's Vedic astrology, there's Chinese astrology. So what I have really noticed about the study of astrology and the different kinds is there's this strong element of the collective mindset that has to do with the astrology. And because we are really in the West, in the Western world, I found that Western astrology is most prevalent and most helpful
Mm,
to living in the Western world and the Western ideologies and mindset. So
mhm.
that's really why I have used it primarily. If I were living in the East, say India, for example, I would probably be a Vedic astrologer.
Right, which obviously that makes sense. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so what are some other types of astrology besides the Western and the Ayurvedic?
Yeah, so there's also Chinese astrology as well.
Mhm.
And speaking of Chinese astrology, we are about to enter the year of the snake,
Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
quite wonderful. And I believe the element would be the wood snake.
Mm.
So that's quite exciting. So those are the three primary um, astrologies as far as spanning history. There's Mayan astrology as well too.
Okay.
So that is something that's big as well. I don't know as much about Mayan astrology.
Mhm. Okay. Well, let's focus on the Western astrology today.
Sounds good.
We're going to focus on your specialty. So a lot of people may not really know the ins and the outs of astrology. And so when you talk about astrology, really, what is the definition of astrology?
That is a wonderful question. So astrology within itself uh, really encompasses both the right hemisphere of the of the mind, which has to do with more of the abstract and the intuitive and the creative, and the left hemisphere. Because if you actually look at the astrology chart, it's all numbers and symbols and angles and degrees. So what astrology really does is it's considered a very holistic science. You take something like acupuncture, which is considered more of a holistic medicine. This would be a more of a holistic science that really um, strives to uncover um, underlying issues. Um, as far as challenges in the chart, it can definitely highlight karmic patterns in the chart, strengths, weaknesses of all types. So it really essentially is wonderfully used as a tool for psychology
Hmm.
and emotional healing.
So, well, that kind of leads into my next question.
Hmm.
Because what my next question is right here. You played right into it. Is how does it affect our everyday lives? And when you're talking about karmic patterns, and so I mean, karmic patterns are kind of important because they're important in the information that I provide, and where we are in our lives today, and breaking these old karmic patterns so that we can shift into this new level of consciousness. And so, to me, as an Akashic record reader, um, it's important for me to be able to recognize the karmic patterns that we're put in order to let go of or to shift from, so that we can shift. So when I get when I get an astrology reading from you, and you can pinpoint these karmic patterns in our lives, how does that work for you? How do you find the karmic patterns?
That is a wonderful question. So the astrology chart, it's like a circle. So there's certain astrological aspects. Um, Say the nodal positions, the moon, uh, planets in retrograde. All of these, and I know just talking about them, it's like, what are these? So there's certain positions and certain aspects and certain planets that indicate karmic patterns.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so for example, what I would do, if someone were to come with me and be like, and was like, I feel like I'm stuck in these karmic patterns, I feel like I'm stuck in these karmic loops. What I would do is I would really focus on specific planets and specific aspects
Okay.
that would relate to those karmic patterns and those karmic loops.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
and again, this may be a really basic question, but I still think it's something that people need to know. You
Sure.
know, when we're born
Yeah.
into this specific lifetime,
Hmm.
and at this particular, we come in with certain traits due to our astrological charts.
Hmm.
And so, can you kind of help people understand how this can help guide them? Like, what specific traits could you recognize, or to help people to understand who they are and how that can help in the overall picture of one living their life?
Yeah, yeah. So what a chart reading will do, no matter what, it helps bring illumination. A lot of times we're stuck in these patterns and these loops that tend to be very unconscious. It's like we're running on this mode of unconsciousness, and there's no one to blame. It really has a lot to do with the speediness of our society, the demands of our society. Um, and it's hard for a lot of those individuals to fit in that societal box. And so what this does, this will highlight again, strengths, weaknesses. Say, for example, someone comes to me and they're like, I've been working this job I really don't like. We'll take a look at the chart and we'll highlight um, some aspects. And then in relation to those aspects, the individual may be like, wow, like, I have some of these strengths I was not aware of. This could really help me with maybe this specific job that I want to do, or this specific individual that I was having a relationship problem with, or this money issue, or this karmic family issue. So
Mhm.
astrology is really holistic and comprehensive in the sense that it shows everything. There's kind of no hiding behind the astrology chart.
You can't run and hide, can you?
You can't hide. Nope.
It's going to tell you exactly what it is.
Yes.
The other thing is that we can focus on like gifts. It's so funny because my chart is very related to mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything in my chart is intuitiveness, mysticism, being this person that can connect. And it did come very naturally to me. I didn't realize it. I didn't know that I was born with the gift. I had to
Yep.
take some classes to uncover it and
Yes.
then recognize, holy cow, why is this so easy for me and other people are struggling with it? And
Mm-hmm.
so when I had my chart done, which I was quite a bit older before the first time that I had a natal chart reading done, and it was interesting to see how this is very natural for me. And so I do want to encourage people, if they don't know where their strong points are, have a chart done so that you can find a little bit more about where these underlying gifts are, like you said, the strong points, your natural abilities that you can start focusing more on, and recognizing and embracing them and building up the strength of what you already have. I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that I think is just as important for me, because I'm a big believer in letting go of past belief systems and working through our trauma to get to the other side of living this whole complete life that we're actually meant to. This thing called living in the life of happiness and joy. And in order to do that, sometimes we have to let go of some, again, going back to the karmic patterns that may cause disruptions in our lives, these old behavior traits that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we may not recognize are actually embedded in us because of the energy that we were born into.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, for what you do, I feel like you can help people recognize that when you have specific struggles or you can't seem to get over a hurdle or you keep repeating the same pattern, what you can provide them is the ability to recognize this is why from an astrological perspective. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so how would that work? So if let's just say that the charts are in a certain alignment, and this is where you can help me because I really don't know that much about it, and that's why I want you to explain. So
Sure.
if the patterns are of the stars and the planets and everything are in a certain way, that is indicating that I'm going to have some kind of a blockage. What type of blockage? Just give me an example of a blockage that you can recognize by someone's chart.
Okay. So this is, yeah. So I will give an example. So there are what are called the nodes. So the north node and the south node. So the north node stands for the evolutionary direction of progression. The south node stands for a lot of the past ingrained behaviors. For example, if someone is born with a bunch of planets sitting on their south node, a lot of times they're stuck in like drama, karmic patterns that are inhibiting them from moving forward in life. So that would be an example.
Mhm.
Another example, and I see this in a lot of charts, would be the planet Pluto, which represents power struggles. For example, if someone was born with the planet Pluto in a retrograde position, that indicates a lot of drama around power issues and power struggles. And as we know, power issues and power struggles are definitely something that can keep someone from moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be like two examples of things that I see a lot in the birth chart that act as drama.
Mm-hmm. So how does somebody deal with that? Do they just have to, okay, well, this is how I was born, so this is the way it's going to be, or can we shift our energy around it?
That is a wonderful question, and this is really why someone gets the astrology reading, because it's easy to be like, oh well, you have that and that's that, and it's like, okay, like now what? So the first thing is to really acknowledge and recognize it's there. That's like the first step in the process of psychological healing and emotional healing. So that would be number one, is the recognition. Number two would be striving to kind of own that this is essentially a part of uh, your creation and your evolutionary process. That it doesn't define you statically, as far as in the sense that it doesn't define um, who you are always going to be, but it's a part of your ongoing process of continual growth and evolution, and that it was put there because it essentially is something that either needs to be reconciled, something that needs to be looked at, something that needs to be cleared, right? And we can tie all those into past karma.
Mhm.
So it's really a tool, for emotional healing, emotional clearing, karmic cleansing, karmic healing, things like this. And what is also really interesting too is a lot of times I'll look at a birth chart and I'll tie it into what's called a transit chart. So I can look at planets that are transiting in relation to the birth chart at any specific time of the individual's life. So a lot of times someone is like, there was this critical event that happened 3 years ago. I feel like it changed the course of my lifetime. I will look at that specific time frame,
Mhm.
um, and that will show certain configurations in relation to the birth chart, and that will help understand why that situation happened, or why that karmic block got cleared, or why that chaotic thing happened, or why you won a lottery at that time, or anything along those lines.
Mhm. Well, I think it's important. As we're talking about this, I'm having all these thoughts going through my head about
Yeah.
how how the universe helps assist us in our growth in so many different ways. So many different
Mm-hmm.
ways. Like because I'm looking at it on a soul level from the Akashic field.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so I see, why were we born to our parents? And, why did we have to go through certain experiences, in our life, that we had to face? And when we look at your soul's choice to be embedded in this particular body and to be born to these particular parents and be in this particular part of the world and have the experiences that we have, I see it from that soul's journey. But when you start tying in, astrology, our guides, and how all of these different things, that these tools that we use to figure out who we are as soul beings, they all work together. It's
Mm-hmm.
all of this
Mm-hmm.
intertwining. And I have to laugh at myself. And it's like, if you don't get it one way, there's going to be 50 different ways that it's all going to play out. And that all of these different aspects of this consciousness that's surrounding us is all in our favor. And it works to help us to achieve what that soul's goal is, or what our human body is meant to do or go through. And if you
Mhm.
don't get it one way, then there's a backup plan. there's
Mhm. Yes. Yeah.
there's
Yes. Yes.
something else out there that's going to help to make sure that we live the lives that we're meant to live in order to grow and to become
Yes.
who we're meant to be. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
love the idea of there's not just one way. There's, we
Yes.
have so many different tools to help us. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And so, with all of that, I do have another question because as you were talking, I have people ask me a lot, and I really didn't even realize I was born in a state that that put my birth time on my birth certificate. But there's a lot of states that didn't put birth times. And I get asked that
Yeah.
question all the time. And by the way, the Akashic records will not ever tell you the time that you're born. And I laugh because it's like different time zones and all of this stuff, so we can't narrow it down. But if somebody can't find or doesn't have their birth time, can you still do a natal chart with that without it?
Yes. Yes. There's two methods I use. I either put Aries, which is the first sign at the ascendant, or I do a noontime chart. So there are fairly accurate ways of getting the astrology chart. So if you don't have your birth time out there, I would definitely still recommend a chart. Um, I will. I can fully give you the essence and the information that you are looking for. Um, yes, and if there's any gaps missing, I guarantee you will be able to kind of fill those in within your own consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's pivot a little bit. When we keep hearing about this age of Aquarius,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that. So when did we move into the age of Aquarius? Was it October, November?
So yeah. So the planet Pluto, which represents the power structures, has now fully moved into Aquarius, and that was very recent. We're talking the last several months. So I would have to say, there's several ideologies about when the age of Aquarius started. Um, it's very safe to say now that we are fully into the age of Aquarius,
Mm-hmm.
especially with Pluto. And the reason why is because Pluto rules the power structures. So the power structures now have gone, more towards things like uh, technology, radical politics, cryptocurrency, invention, AI, science, technology, science.
Yeah, yeah.
So that, yeah, so safe to say we are definitely in in that age right now. Um, Now, some of the positives about being in the age of Aquarius is there are strong correspondences with Aquarius relating to things like metaphysics, um, humanitarian ideals, grassroots organizations, astrology, things like this.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a potential danger is being too invested in the technological side, which could really kind of take away our souls and our humanity. So I'd say we're kind of at this interesting evolutionary point as far as how far are we going to take AI? How far are we going to take this technology?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that you should even bring that up because, um,
Yeah,
the technology thing. There's some fun things about it. There's some things
of
that can
course.
make our lives easier and all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
yes,
But
easier.
what the information that I keep receiving, and as we're moving into this fifth dimensional consciousness, is
Yeah.
everything is bringing us back to our heart, bringing us back to this thing called love, the thing that's called compassion and caring about humanity and the
Uh-huh.
earth and getting more earth related and and more or less becoming more creative, bringing back our happiness and joy. And what you just mentioned is very two-sided. Like you said, the technology can take us away from our soul. that identity of who
Yeah.
we
Yep.
are. And we can
Yep.
lose and forget this creativity part, art, and writing, and, these basic things that come from the core essence of who we are and what brings us joy. And it's easy. It would be really easy right now to fall into that construct of losing our truth of who we are. So to me, it's almost like we're in this weird polarity that
Ye-
the universe is saying, find you, find the love, find your soul, find the creativity of who you are, get happy. And then technology is doing everything to pull it in the opposite direction.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so we're
Uh-huh.
in this weird, I call it the push me, pull me.
Uh-huh.
Way
Uh-huh.
back, I always see it. I'm a little bit older. So I grew up with Dr. Doolittle. I don't know if anybody remembers Dr. Doolittle or not, but Dr. Doolittle had this llama that was like a two-headed llama. And he would want to go one way and then the other one would want to go the other way. And I would call it the push me, pull me. And it's like
Mhm.
what our natural core, what the universe is taking us to, that metaphysical understanding of consciousness, is the llama's pulling in this way of, boy, it feels so good over here. Love, compassion, caring. And then that heavy 3D world, the technology and the power and all of that is pulling us back this way. And so since we're living in this strange push me, pull me world, these two parallels, we're in this place of really recognizing that, who do you want to become? Do you want to become that little
Interesting.
robot,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
do you really want to come and
Mhm.
shift this consciousness into this way of being that's a little bit to our unknown? And so it can be a little bit scary going into this place of consciousness when we've been living more geared towards that heavy 3D technology, mind-based control world. So as we're seeing this, what are your thoughts of how the astrology is showing us that what they're putting on to us to gain this higher understanding of consciousness? I don't know if I asked that
Yeah.
question to where it made sense.
Yeah, no, that actually really ties in. Your question is really tied into what you said about you know 5D consciousness, and then in relation to the whole 3D craziness of the technology. So what I see just astrologically is we're actually headed into a new era. And the reason why is because not only has Pluto just changed signs, the planet Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, which also rule the collective sphere, they're all changing signs as well next year. So what astrologically what we're really seeing here is we're really going from an era of earth and water to an more of an era of air and fire.
Mm.
Now, air and fire, really represents the yang energy, that masculine energy. And of course, in this world, we need a balance of both. But there is the danger with excess air and fire. That we're starting to see like excess fires, things blowing up, things like this. So this is one of the things that we're seeing. I know 20 miles down the road there was just a battery explosion. Um, at a power plant that I live nearby, unfortunately.
Mm.
So that was not good. Um, so that is something. The excess air and fire. Um, but what is exciting, again, as you mentioned, the rise in technology. I'm just hoping that we can be evolved enough as a species, as a collective, to use this technology to really start kind of cleaning up the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really kind of feel like we're at this pivotal point, and astrologically speaking, we're at this pivotal point where there's going to be no matter what, a rise in the technology, which really represents, the 3D world, but what are we going to do with it?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's how I've always seen it. I think, the way that
Yeah.
the records have always explained it to me is that,
Yeah.
as we're moving into this place of more love and compassion, shedding, going
Yeah.
back to what we're talking about, this old karmic energy that's keeping us in the
Mhm.
fear mode, or, the anxiousness and all of that stuff that, keeps us in our heads. My guides have told me repeatedly, that we're moving into this time, or this era, that is helping us to shed those belief systems so that we stand more heart-based and more
Yeah.
loving and caring and compassionate. And the way that we see
Yeah.
the earth, is more of, let's help her heal. Let's
Yeah. Yeah.
help each other. Let's pull away from the separateness just because of ideologies, or because I'm from a different part of the world than you, or my skin color's different, or whatever it is. It's getting to the point of understanding that we're all on a vibrational frequency and we're all intertwined. And because of our shifts, or where we're going in our states of consciousness, that the AI and the technology is more serving more as a tool to help us, exactly like what you said. It's a tool to help us clean up the earth, to become more conscious of how much nature serves us. But it's so hard to see today because we're in this weird flux place. And it's
Yeah.
like, I'm that in that push me, pull me. Well, this sounds really good, but this is what I'm really familiar with. This is the way it's going to
Mhm.
be because it's always been. But I could actually change my programming. I could actually be
Mhm.
this way and then use this tool to help feed the hungry, or to help
Yeah.
dissolve plastics in the ocean, or help to figure
Yeah.
out what to do with trash. And
Yep. Yep.
so, is that what astrology is showing you? Is that we kind of have this dualistic way of being, but we're transitioning more into that heart based?
Yeah. Well, what it really is showing here is that we are entering into some powerful astrological combinations. For example, Pluto into Aquarius. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius, there was the American and the French revolutions. So those are two strong, historical points. Uranus is going to be moving into Gemini. The last time Uranus, which rules technology, was in Gemini, there was the explosion of the atom bomb. So that being said, that is just a very powerful combination of things. So it's like what I'm kind of seeing from the astrological perspective is that um, we're coming up to a very energetically intense, fulfilled time, and it's like, what are we going to do with
Yeah.
that, right? Yeah, are we going to take the leap
Yeah.
this way or this way?
Yeah. Yeah. And, and again, I've always had that. What my guides always say to me is that we're going to bring you to
Yeah.
your knees. Because if everything was nice and
Uh huh.
smooth, then we wouldn't ever make any changes. And so
There
it's
wouldn't be the con.
and we've been
Yeah.
in this place of breaking. We've been basically
Yeah.
since about, for me, it's been, my information is about 2012 is when this energy really started coming in. And
Yeah.
we've seen a lot of shifts and changes in ourselves and situations, to where it may be relationships, it may be friendships, it may be jobs, it may be all of these different things that happen to us that bring us to our knees. And we recognize, okay, well, at this point, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I have to make a shift one way or another. And here we are. We're in this situation of, do I want to stay over here with the atom bomb, or do I want to throw up the love sign and peace and love thy neighbor, so to
Yeah.
speak?
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
And
and it's very interesting too. Just kind of some of the individuals that are in charge nowadays. Just sort of as a symbolic representation
yeah.
of some of the collective holds that have been on us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Quite interesting.
but we also recognize that they're everything that's been going on. And gosh, for, again, since 2012, we can see
Yeah.
how we've been pulling apart. And the
Yeah.
separateness,
Been a while. Yep.
to where it's pulling us to one extreme or to the other. And what I feel like is that we had to have this so that we could see where we stand, to where when everything was all nice and mild and nobody's, you politically correct, so to speak, and, in being a certain way, hiding, not being really able to speak your rage or your peace. It's kind of like just staying in the
Yeah.
status quo. And,
Yeah.
so now it's like, okay, well, now I see the anger in people and I see the love in the people. So
Yeah.
it's showing me I can choose a direction to go, that I don't have to stay in this neutral place of, basically, I used to see it as to where it's almost like non emotional. And it's like you just kind of were surviving. But now you're getting pushed in one direction or another in order to make a decision of what you feel the most comfortable in. Make
Yes.
sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's and it was almost yeah, it was almost sort of this gauze. I saw it kind of as a gauze of like unconsciousness.
Yeah.
And I have so heavily felt that energy with humanity. And the past couple years I felt like the layer has been so thick, and now it's maybe starting to peel off a
Yeah.
little, and there's sort of holes coming in the gauze
Yeah.
because the unconsciousness has to
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's what we're getting pushed into. And obviously to me,
Yeah.
this is what, again, all of this, the energy that's coming in from the planets aligning in certain ways. And my gosh, if you
Yeah.
haven't felt, the solar flares and the energy that's coming in, I don't know where you've been. Because this basically 2024, boy, man, there was a lot of stuff that was happening in 2024. And so with that being said, what are you seeing that in 2025 maybe things are kind of settling and the words coming to me, are things softening up just a little bit, or is it still going to be like the daggers being thrown at us to deal with?
Well, that is a great question. So 2025, we have these collective planets, as I mentioned before, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. All moving into the different signs. Pluto has just moved into Aquarius. It'll be in Aquarius for approximately 20 years.
Mm.
Uranus is going to be moving into Gemini the middle of the year, and then Neptune is going to be moving into Aries. Starting in the spring. So what we're really seeing here is kind of a whole new shift and a whole new orientation towards a lot of the aspects in our life in relation to the collective. Um, Air and Fire is it's very talkative. It can be explosive. It's very energetic. So as far as like things simmering down, collectively I don't really see that. Um but what I am seeing though is the ability for individuals to be able to find their center more and more. Um Within sort of this transitionary time.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's how I see it, is being able to find your center.
Yeah.
What the way that
Yeah.
it's always been described to me, always, I keep saying always, the way that the records described to me is that, like I'm seeing like we're in a blender, and like we've been in a
Yeah.
blender and everything's getting all mixed up. But now in 2025, everything is kind of starting to settle down. And it's basically
Uh-huh.
it's our integration time. It's almost like
Uh-huh.
we've
Uh-huh.
had everything shaken up. We've had stuff moved out. We've had our lives shifted and changed. And now we're in this place more of, okay, now I've got to settle into the changes that have occurred. So I always call it the integration time. Is that how you see
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
kind of?
Yeah, and that I think a lot of it has to do with the individual's personal astrology chart,
Hmm.
and how the transitionary collective aspects are affecting the individual's chart.
Hmm.
And the reason why, I'll give an example. So the planet Neptune, which represents spirituality, is going into the sign Aries. So Aries marks the cycle of a new beginning, a new layer of understanding for things in relation to things like mysticism, spirituality, shamanism, dream work, as all represented by Neptune. So collectively, Neptune going into Aries um, could really lay the groundwork for a lot of new discoveries in the realm of spirituality. Someone like you, for example, who has been on a spiritual path for a long time, this could play out in several ways. You could be like, oh, I already kind of knew this stuff, or oh, I'm or oh, I'm here to be a pioneer for this.
Mhm.
So in that sense, it'll play out that way. But again, it has a lot to do with the individual's
Yeah.
karma. Yeah, so there's many layers,
Mhm.
that will play a role in things that are going on collectively.
Okay, so this is kind of a repeat question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Sure.
Just to make sure everybody gets the message. So at
Yeah.
this particular time, what do you think that people need to be the most conscious of or the most aware of the way that the way that everything is lining up at this particular time? So what do you think is the most important message?
Okay, that is a great question. So I feel like the most important message is to understand that not always in history do this many planets move into preceding signs at the same time. This is an indication that we're really entering a new era.
Yeah.
And that in a new era, a lot happens in a small amount of time um, in relation to the air and the fire elements, which can end up being overwhelming and excessive. I recommend that if there's anything you can do to pull away from media, to pull away from the hype, that you do that.
I concur. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So before I jump in on that, is there anything else that you want to share about this topic? About
Yeah, it's always wonderful to know your astrology natal chart. And if you have not had yours read, I definitely recommend that you get that reading. And the reason why the natal chart is so important is because it acts as the foundational sort of key lock combination into all of your psychological patterns.
mhm, yeah. So I mean I'm going to jump back to the media thing
Sure.
because I'm going to talk a little bit about a little thing that's becoming really aware um, for me. So right now we're recording this in January, but this it's going to be a little while before it actually is posted to YouTube. But so when the time that people see this, they're going to a whole month is going to go by. But what I have noticed the shift and the change that has been occurring within me over about the last 3 months is specifically finding myself moving away from negativity. And and this is something that's been said by lots of people. I see it as almost like the blinders are being pulled off of us. And again, it may not be for everybody. Some people are a little bit further down their path than other people. But what I'm really finding is that I it's like manipulation is becoming blatant. Like it's like the when we're shifting into this new energy and this time that's being created around us, I'm finding that things that manipulate people, like commercials, the news stuff, all of the stuff that is saying things to feed on people's emotions, not necessarily the truth, but to make them feel a certain way in order to buy the product. And it's gotten where I can't hardly even stand looking at commercials on TV, or watching certain things. I'm really having to stay away from it because it's really making me physically sick. It's like it makes my stomach sick to watch. And like
Well,
something as simple as like pharmaceutical commercials, and one of them specifically is about weight loss. Or psoriasis is one that I constantly see about. This commercial is geared to point people who feel bad about their skin and feel like if I have this outbreak on my arm, people are going to be staring at me. And people will
yeah,
think that I'm less than, something's wrong with me. So I have to hide. And so I have to take this product so that people will accept me. And it's becoming so clear that people are feeding in, like when you really start looking at how products are marketed, it's to manipulate somebody. Not always, not all things, but that there's these certain products are geared towards people's insecurities, are the way
yeah,
that we feel bad about ourselves, or that we feel less than, and which is another reason why we need to work through these blockages, these old karmic patterns, so that when we hear somebody judge us or see us, or we're feeling that they're looking at us a certain way that makes us feel small, we won't feel that way anymore. But I think it's really
yeah.
important what you said about the like a news media. If you really start listening to how people get your attention, they're pulling you into a story that they know is going to feed you. And when you buy into the hate, the anger, or whatever, the frustration, or yeah, that's how I believe, I'm listening to you, and you get pulled into that way of being, you're not seeing the whole picture. You're only seeing one side. And if you constantly find yourself buying into that, recognize that polarity, this is that is feeding that polarity of one side and another. And
Uh-huh.
where we're moving into is by letting go of these old belief systems and thought patterns that help us to buy into these ways of thinking are falling and fading away. That's how I see it. And this is what I've become really aware of over the last several months, of how I've shifted and changed. And I know that I'm not the only one. It's part of the collective whole of what's happening, because it's moving into this fifth dimensional consciousness. So,
So I have a question. So is it kind of like it's in our face so much because it's looking for a resolve?
mhm. Um, well, my records are jumping in, and they're saying recognize it's the ability to create fear within the individual so that they become so afraid that they'll buy into the product. Again, and we hear, this was an election year. You can hear how one side was saying one thing to create fear, and the other side was saying something else to create fear. We're so fear
Yeah,
based that we make our
yeah,
choices and decisions based on fear. And and look at all of the different kinds of fears that there. Fear of eating certain foods, fear of being around certain peoples, fear of certain belief systems, fear of this person's going to do this
yeah,
to me, taking away my rights, or whatever it is. Or all of these fears are where, and see, to me, this is what I see as the explosion. This is what I see as the fire, that we've created so much of this fear that it's going to end up basically exploding. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be a war or anything like that. Maybe it exploded in me to where I can't do this anymore. I broke to where I can't live in this fear anymore. And now when I hear it, it physically makes me sick. There was my little explosion that took me on a different course. So the
hmm,
way that we interpret things and see things can be on completely different ways of looking at the whole earth burning. It can just be our own little storm, that causes that shift within us.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my thought. So with all that being said, I'm excited about the new era. I'm excited about this change of what's happening, because I think it really is going to change how we see one another, the way that we see, the way that we treat the planet and the earth, and society changes, and all of those old ways of being, I feel, are falling away. Do you feel that way?
Yeah. So just astrologically speaking, the next year coming now brings in a new era of in relation to the north and the south node. So the north and the south node, they stand as 2 points opposite each other in the astrology charts. And the north node stands for the direction of evolution, the progressionary direction, and that's going to be entering into Pisces, which is really all about emotional release, spiritual healing, the psychic realm. So this is going to be kind of a primary point of focus for us, which is really nice. So for those individuals who have really been on a path, a north node in Pisces will help like illuminate that path. However, on the flip side, Pisces can also relate to escapism, drugs, delusions, things like this. So we're kind of, this world offers everything. So we're also going to really kind of see that
Yeah.
extreme as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And which is where we are now, again, that heavy 3D world, or this 5D
Yeah,
reality,
yeah,
it's still the
yeah.
opposites.
Or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, or further
Yeah.
illumination.
Yeah. I like further illumination. Let's see
Yeah,
more
yeah.
clearly. Let's just try to see more clearly.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
The North Node in Pisces is a wonderful tool for
Yeah.
that.
So what would be your final message that you'd like to share with everybody?
So my final message out there is always going to be a message of unity. Unity, I believe, is the healing force. Um, in that unity essentially stands strong. Division and divisiveness is where we're weak. So if we want to live more of kind of a heaven on earth, type of existence, that we always strive for, forgiveness, healing, holistic views, things like this, that we strive to move more and more that direction, as opposed to the direction of fear-based thinking.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I think that that's a beautiful way to end this conversation. So thank you for those words. And again, if anybody wants to have a beautiful session with Adam, we will have all of his contact information in the description. So thank you guys, all of you guys, for joining me. And I am so grateful to have you guys share this message with us. And we will see you next time.